Are we criminalizing kids? In the early 1990s, the federal government allowed schools to create their own police forces to make sure students and teachers are safe. But some think this kind of policing has gone too far. According to the New York Daily News, from October to December of last year, police here in New York arrested on average 5 school kids a day, and it's happening all over the country.
You might wonder whatever happened to sending students to the principal's office or calling their parents. In some spots, the approach seems to be call police first, ask questions later. Yes, even kindergartners are not immune. Last year, a 6-year-old girl in Georgia was handcuffed and arrested after throwing books and toys in a school tantrum, making a precinct a de facto detention center. In Texas, an estimated 300,000 children were charged with misdemeanors in 2010. Though no numbers are tracked nationally on how often police are called in to arrest students in school, in Connecticut, over the past year, nearly 1,700 students have been arrested, almost 2/3 of them for breach of peace, minor fights, and disorderly conduct.
Joining us now, Catherine Simpkins, who successfully represented a 12-year-old Texas girl who was arrested for applying perfume in class, and Sean Burke, president of the School Safety Advocacy Council. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Sean, so is this overreaction or just an overabundance of caution?
Well, I think it's more of being overwhelmed. I think that educators and teachers now and administrators are overwhelmed because they're not prepared to deal with society and with what is entering the schools.
How bad has it gotten?
Well, I think that every school is different because I think it's very reflective of the community that it educates.
Catherine, the 12-year-old girl you represented, tell me about what happened in this case.
Yes, Sarah was 12 years old. She was in 6th grade, and she was in a classroom where she had problems with bullying before, where other students were fairly regularly criticizing her and ganging up on her. They told her that she smelled bad, so she got out some perfume that she had gotten for her birthday and sprayed it on herself. And the girls around her started making a lot of noise. The situation got louder and louder, and the teacher called in a school resource officer.
So what happened? So she was arrested?
She wasn't arrested. She actually got a Class C misdemeanor ticket, which you do not go to jail for, but it does actually go to an adult court. So it's different than going to juvenile court. You get a ticket where you go to adult court. If you pay the ticket, then you're considered to be guilty.
But why was she given this?
She was given it for something called disruption of classes, which is under Section 37 of the Texas Education Code. And those are special laws that create criminal charges, basically, for things that wouldn't be criminal outside of the school setting. So, for example, for disruption of classes, it could be making a noise within a certain distance of a school or preventing somebody from going to class.
Brian, is this too much?
Well, in this case, obviously this suspect not knowing the background, not knowing everything that did happen there, it's hard to make a comment. But you do need these laws. You do have legitimate reasons and legitimate times where classes are disrupted that the police may have to take action.
So who has to make these decisions then? Is it the teacher? Is it the principal? Is it someone else involved at school?
Well, I think it has to be if a police officer is called to the scene, it has to be the police officer. But you have to use discretion. You have to understand the situation, and you have to understand what best resolves it. An arrest isn't always necessary, but sometimes it is.
Catherine, why you think it's an overreaction, obviously, some of these cases. Why?
Absolutely.
Why is it happening more?
I think part of it is poor training. I think that instead of spending money on training in de-escalation techniques and positive behavioral supports for administrators and staff and teachers at the school, they're spending money on bringing in the police officers. I think there's not a very good definition of what they're supposed to be doing there. And that leads to police officers becoming involved in situations that they don't necessarily need to be involved in.
Brian, how do we improve that training?
Well, I think training has to be mandatory. I think before any officer goes into school, I think they have to be properly trained. We train thousands of police officers across the country, and we train them to deal with this. But unfortunately, like she said, with the budget crunch, training is the first thing that's cut.
And how much of the problem is that the training is so different in different localities?
Well, I think it has to be a national standard, and we train to a national standard, and we train police officers how to effectively work in schools and how to develop relationships.
All right, Catherine Simpkins and Sean Burke, thank you both very much. Appreciate you being here.